Hey everybody, how y'all doing? It's your boy Shawn. I don't even know why I'm starting off like that because I never started off like that, but it is what it is. So I have a friend here. Uh, we've had a short friendship, but it has seemed like it has gone on for a good 30 years, and we had a brief time together in the same geographic area, and since then we have been best friends through texting once a month, maybe two, but it's been good. Anyways,
Yeah.
he's got a lot to say. Sociologist from a Christian perspective. So that's going to be interesting to talk about that and how we walk through that. But we've already started the conversation. So what I decided to do was that I was going to just start recording right now because I need to record this thing right now. And we've been already talking about like the way we think from things past, present, and apparently my phone, I think my mic doesn't want to tell me what's going on, but I can hear you, so it's all good. Um, so yeah, let's know. Let me go and oh, there we go. Yes. Uh, welcome everybody, Aaron. I won't say your middle name, Klassen. Okay, tell us a little
All
bit about
right.
yourself. Tell us you married, like you got kids. What's going on? Let us know a little bit about that, your occupation, and then we're gonna go right back into what we were just talking about. But
Right on. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on. It's interesting in these times to connect, to use this media to connect with people you haven't seen uh, for a long time across wide distances, all the rest of it. It's weird, you know. Okay, anyway, but I'm already getting into it.
yeah, I know. Sorry, I know we're excited. Okay, I'll ask the
Yeah.
questions quick, and you can answer them. Are you married?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I'm married for 13 years. Wonderful woman. Met in the same hometown. We've got three kids. Our I think like a lot of folks, life sort of got serious after meeting my wife,
okay.
and so it sort of forced me into a number of different pursuits. It took me a while to land on one that I'd consider a long-term investment. And anyway, that's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's awesome. I mean, so you have, is it three boys, two boys?
Two boys, and then we had a daughter a year and a half ago. So we've
Okay.
got a 6.5-year old, a 5-year old, and a 1.5-year old.
Oof.
Yeah. Ask me in another 2 months, and it'll be easier to say. The math becomes 7, 5, and 2. So
Okay. Yeah, I was say 7, 5, and 2. They took a little time between 7, 5, and then he said, "Hey, hold up a minute, hold up a minute." And then there was this amazing bottle of wine. The right song was playing, and the rest
something
is
like that.
history.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes. Okay. So we were just talking a little bit about this is the last guided part of this conversation, everybody. So just hold on to your turbans because it's going to be a fun ride. Okay. We're just talking about like remembering the past and how that's shaped the way we think going to the future. And in this perspective, it's about faith, I guess, is what we were talking about. Just like before, I used to be like, okay, I'm not going there. I would fight things, and we're always facing new issues, new problems. And currently, for me, it's like I just lost a whole bunch of speaking gigs. Like just they're all gone.
Mm,
Like just
mhm, mm,
and some of them were sweet.
mm.
Like so sweet. I was like, yeah, and I was like I was counting my chickens before they were hatched. I legitimately was. I was like, okay, get ready. This after this one, it's gonna be you're gonna be on the train, bud.
Right, right.
And both of them just like had to close the border on one, and the other one they just like they're not getting the signups, and it's just too uncertain to roll the event with that kind of cost on the front end of it to
Mhm,
kind of do it right. And
mhm,
obviously now next year and the years after, everything's gonna be different right from this.
mhm,
But it's all to say like it's unknown, it's freaky, it's scary.
mhm.
I don't like, and I yeah, like I had a big partner just jump out of the ministry just recently, like legit on this, and that's like represents half of um the standard income of my life.
Mm,
So that was like kind of like, oof, okay, so what do we do now? Well,
mhm, mhm,
entrepreneur side starts to kick in, but I'm remembering the past. I'm like, I just need to keep walking out in faith in this perspective. Like, I believe that there's a God. So I'm going to say, and the Judeo-Christian God. So for those of you who don't know, now you know, the cat's out the bag. And one of our precepts is that we follow God on a with a large element of faith in and moving forward, not knowing.
Mm.
And so, like, this is one of those not knowing. Like, starting this thing, going every night, preaching live, Facebook Live, and watching the type of people that would jump in. Like, it was kind of scary the first day to do
Mm.
that, but to see the response that's starting to happen already
Mm-hmm.
is pretty intense. So I'm excited for it. But I don't know how it's going to look. I'm not putting a stencil on and saying that's what it's going to look like, because I know that that's not the case. It might be one step to something else. I don't know. What
Right.
do you think on that? Because you made some pretty big jumps in your life.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, there's some serious leaps of faith, steps of faith, baby crawls of faith, I suppose. All kinds. Um, but should I be feeling any pressure here?
Oh no, man, do your thing, man. There's no look. This is, well, for one thing, this is recorded, so I'm not showing I don't have to show everything. If you make a mistake and you don't want something in there, it's not gonna be in there, and I'll for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So it's all good. Don't worry.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, but no, yeah, you're right. So yeah, some steps of faith. Ah, it's a tricky one. You know, you talk about some of the changes happening in your field. Same thing. You know, and there's so many moving targets.
Mm,
So I teach in a university college. It's a small, really small school,
mm,
um, and it's Christian liberal arts college, and it's in an urban context here in Winnipeg. And you know, we're even though we're small and everything, we're having to deal with a number of different things. And one of the easiest things you can do is to compare yourself to other people and see
yeah.
what they're doing. So what our school did recently was to get together with some of the, you know, local university presidents and their deans or whomever, and compare notes, and then go on to, um, you know, strategize from there. Um, but comparing, you know, a little itty bitty school to a giant provincial school can be two different things,
Yeah.
and one school's response doesn't necessarily mean the other school should follow. In fact, you could be setting yourself up with different, um, you know, for different risks in different ways. But I think that's probably as far as I should go in terms of that. All that to say is there's an element of faith that, yeah, no matter what, we haven't been here before.
Mm,
Not specifically, at least. I made the comment to someone recently that COVID-19 is is uh, is yeah, a unique experience we've never had, at least in name, but in terms of kind, we've all experienced crisis of some kind.
yeah.
Even these sort of uh, silent crises like self-doubt.
Mm,
You know, the number of people with depression and anxiety today is itself on pandemic
mm.
levels, but we don't talk about it because of different societal expectations that we hold it together and present ourselves as confident and so on.
Mm. Yeah, I always wondered about that. Like, so, like you stated here a little bit on this, like this experience of that we've never had this like COVID experience, and you kind of caught yourself and said, well, we've had them before, and then you place that on like our personal experiences where we've had crises, and then we go back. It's interesting that people say we've never experienced this before. I'm like, we did, as humanity has experienced this before.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing we learned is that humanity was able to rebound. When I look at the staggering numbers of the
Mm-hmm.
amount of people that died before, like World War I, World War II,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from
Spanish
from
flu.
the Spanish flu, from there what's the other one I'm trying to think of? From Genghis Khan, like all the people that he slaughtered, like everything, just all the amounts of people that have died.
Mm-hmm.
And yet humanity was able to rebound.
Mm-hmm.
And there was I think there was some kind of common cause that drew everybody together. And it's one of the things I'm enjoying most about coronavirus right now is that all the other stupid nonsense news is out the door.
Mm-hmm.
We're not creating nonsense news. It
Right.
it doesn't even have a place. We're like, I don't care. Like, what are you talking about? Like, people are
Well,
dying.
it, well, and how do you qualify that, or how do you define? news, because in my mind there's still some spin on the news.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, nonsense news is like, it used like it just seemed like it was getting crazy on the amount of like stuff that's talking about either gender identity, racial tensions, like
Mm,
all this stuff that didn't really like that. I'm like, okay, listen, is Canada or United States racist right now?
mm,
There might be some people that are, but as a whole, we are the most non-racist group of people in the history of humanity. If you look at it before, like it was assumed like I don't like you because you're yellow, and that means
mhm,
something different to me, and I don't like you. Well, I should be over you because I am this way,
mhm,
and like and racism to a degree is everywhere, in every like even within its own specific cells. And I put loose fingers on that. I hate doing rabbit ears, but like within the black community, there's racism with other blacks. Like you
mhm,
have really black people and you have really light people, and I find myself on the lighter end. But
mhm,
so
mhm,
I face certain discriminations, and at the end of the day, lots of people were just holding on to discriminations as I thought, and it's my own opinion, um, using discrimination as a way to excuse them from taking responsibility for anything.
mhm. And that's been studied, that when people come under pressure, they project their frustrations onto other things or people,
Mm,
right? Whether it's stopping off for a drink on the way home from work because you just want a little time to unwind before you take on the responsibility of seeing your kids and your wife,
mhm,
or it's on, as you say, a racial level.
mm,
But I think it's important to distinguish between prejudice and discrimination. Like you
mm.
said, there's different discriminations,
Right.
whether it's internal within the Black community or it's externalized, this sort of thing.
Mm.
And that's
Well,
where it gets tricky. Like in Canada, you can make the argument that we're one of the lower racialized or racializing
mm,
countries. And yet, what did we find out in the last election when we discovered that our prime minister was caught in black and brown face?
mhm.
Right, right. This was.
Right. And then I said, okay, so I had two thoughts on it. I'll be real with you. I was kind of like, finally. I'm like, we're seeing how, like, for me, I'm not a big fan of Justin Trudeau. That's just me. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not judging. It's fine. I make my own opinion. Now, he did that and I laughed. But at the same time, because of the way I think, I was like, why should that ruin this man's career?
Mm,
He wasn't like, I want to know what his heart was behind the process. And I can't attribute to him that something that I don't know from him.
mm,
I was just
mm,
sharing this on my live feed the other day about like how it's easy to be, it's better to be quick to forgive than quick to hold on.
mm,
So like my friend came to me and he's whatever, and he walks into the skate park. I come to the skate park. It was an indoor skate park. It was kind of private, whatever. I walk in and he sees me. We haven't seen each other in a while, and he goes like, "Hey, what's up, my nigga?" And
mm.
immediately he apologized, but I didn't even care because I'm like, I know the heart behind what you're saying. Like I already know that you're excited to see me, and I'm
Mhm,
excited to
mhm,
see you.
mhm,
And in any of those cases, when we're excited, it's like we have this uncontrollable reflex. It's kind of
mhm,
hardwired into
mhm,
us.
mhm,
So I
mhm,
assume that he
mhm,
uses that word on a regular with his buddies as a term of endearment.
mm.
He's
Yeah.
not like he was. It's not so like I'm not going to go and attribute malice to this guy. I'm like, well, I not a word I would say. Hey, you should use that on a regular basis. I wouldn't say whatever. But I'm not going to hold you to the grindstone. I'm like, that's going to just ruin our relationship on something like that. And I'm guaranteeing you, I am probably going to do something that would be equally as offensive to you at some point in our relationship.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So I don't know. That's just me.
So it seems to me that there's a relationship of trust already established there,
Yeah.
right? And trust is something that we know takes longer to build up in a relationship than it takes to lose.
Yeah.
And so that can be strong,
Yeah.
and certainly, you can let it sort of fall. But does it not, like in your opinion, historically, are we not at a point where using that kind of a phrase is not going to cause some harm or some offense to somebody? I mean, especially with our phones quickly at hand, and especially in terms of the media, and their strategy to get sound bites, because these are or clickbaits, right?
Yeah.
This is
Clickbait
what.
and push their agenda. Like, so
Sure.
you saw them, like, sometimes, like, most media, most mainstream media is owned by the lefties or the liberals, super liberal people, because they're artsy, and that's fine. And that's okay. We need both sides of the coin. I get it. Otherwise the balance is out. But they wanted clickbait, and that was it. But then they were taking out their own.
Mm.
So it was kind of like hard. Like, I could see that kind of pull, but I was happy that they ran it,
Mm.
because I was like, that showed me a glimpse that there's a hope that you will bring integrity back to media. Because you were like, I'm okay with people making fun of both sides. I think it's hilarious. Like, if you make fun of, like, it, equally, if the president was conservative, or prime minister rather, I would make fun of him too. Why not? Or her, whoever gets the job. I don't really care.
Yeah, it's in my mind. I agree there too. As a sociologist, I'm critical of these different systems or perspectives as they inform a whole system.
Yeah.
So whether you're left or right, I try to stay critical of both sides, and I think that just introduces a level of accountability that otherwise gets glossed over.
Well, for sure. Like, if you're on one side and it's like this, you're like, oh, that's how they do it. That's how we do it. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like, when you see something, you come into a situation where you're coming in at from a central view, and you see something, you're like, that's stupid. And they're like, no, that's how we do it. I'm like, well, why do you do it that way? Likewise, if I go into another situation where someone else is a certain way, like, well, why do you do that? That's stupid. I'm going to that holds that accountability. That's why you need both sides. Like, you can't be all capitalism and not worry about the poor and the broken.
That's it.
But you can't be only worried about the broken, because you're never going to have any capital to take care of the broken. So they have to play nice, and they have to make decisions together.
Yeah.
And that will actually make the long-term solution. I think that's just me. Anyways, back to our. I kind of digressed a little bit there. My gosh, I'm all over the place, but I'm moving over there.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if we are, like, we're dealing with this panic of this disease, and it's really kind of, at least I think, brought out some of the goodness revived some of the goodness and some of the traditions that we so crave for. It's
like what?
I think the family unit is going to be craved more. I don't think for a time it would seem like this is not what we need to be doing. Like, we need no family, no traditional roles where this person plays plays the loving character and emotional support, where the other one produces the productivity support, and how do we pick yourself off the ground kind of stuff, and how do we create and take risk support. What I think that's kind of coming back. And, like, so my wife, for example, like, for the last couple of days, we had to wake up to do nothing, right? It's starting to sink in. You wake up to do nothing. So me being a creator and I have to do something, I started doing something. I just made it work around my family schedule where they don't need me at all. So they get me, like, if they're up for 12 hours a day, they're going to get me for pretty much 12 hours that day. And my wife says she's actually starting to be able to sleep in. This is in the history that I've known her. She's never been able to do that. Like, because she's always contemplating, okay, I have to get to work. I have to feed my kids. I have to, I got to be the mom. I got to be the hot wife. I got to do all those things, all these things that I need to be. But now we take out one element, one of the, let's say if we could categorize what the major elements are, take that one out, the stress of having to work. And she gets to be mom. She is, and I'm not saying women need to do the laundry, but she's been knocking it out of the park, bud. We've been doing laundry like nobody's business. I've been doing 2, she's been doing 10. That's just how it's been working, okay? Now, I got to do all the entertainment in the house for the kids most of the time, so don't. Yeah. That's the trade-off. And I'm the disciplinarian. Ugh, I hate that job. But which it was interesting for her to say, I could finally fall asleep again, because she used to, when she'd wake up, she couldn't go back down, because her fear was she wouldn't be ready for that 7 o'clock, ring the bell, 9 to 5, let's go, and it's just a pound all the way through, stop. And I wonder what that's going to do for us as as a society.
Hmm.
One, it's going to suck for the housing community, like market, because some people are probably going to start leaving jobs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to start back to single income households, which then will drive the house property, like everything will start to get cheaper because of that.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Like we've
Because
seen,
people
yeah, oil already is,
80,
Alberta oil is essentially worthless because they have to combine it with lighter oil in order to get it through the pipelines.
oh really?
Yeah, you might have seen this article because like without that lighter oil that they're mixing with the Alberta Select oil, it's essentially worthless.
Oh my,
It's unbelievable.
really?
Um, it's, yeah, it was in the CBC yesterday. I think it was an article in there. But I think you're onto something. My like as a sociologist, I'm really interested in how we define ourselves. So some of these things about identity, like you're talking about,
Mm,
or how we understand ourselves.
mm,
A lot of what we define ourselves as derives from our work we do.
mm,
And there's speaking of articles, there's a fascinating one in the Guardian over the weekend, written by a psychiatrist who is just reflecting on the distancing now between him and his patients, where he's having to interview them virtually, um, which is introducing a number of problems for some of these people. And also just this consternation that they no longer know who they are because they can't work in the same capacity they used to work.
mm.
So you might be onto something in terms of the family. At least it gives you something to do. I don't think you're not working.
Mhm.
You're still doing laundry.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
still,
think our focus like shifts. Like all of a sudden I just started saving so much money
mm,
because one of my go tos in emotional distress, and I only can say that because I'm mature now and to understand what that even means, and that this was the cause and effect of that. Is I would go buy something so the dopamine would be released and I would just feel better.
mm,
So I would buy things, just
mm.
stupid things, but always from the same area. It was always fishing stuff because I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
at least at some point I'd actually use it. But if I didn't have fishing, I don't know what I would purchase.
Huh,
But in that saying, I would have just random stuff in my house all the time,
right.
and like that doesn't even make sense. And so now not being able to go shopping, not these things or whatever, that stopped instantaneously. Uh, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel myself like, okay, I'm always been a family man, so I know that I have that. And I'm just saying some people might not be totally family guys. I get it. But it's just been very interesting to see like my role emerge even more so than has ever emerged
Mm,
at a rate that it would, like, if I was still going the way that things were going, the, the timeline would easily get expanded, would just be even larger.
right.
But now we have this time that was borrowed essentially. Like my biological clock isn't borrowed, but my work clock has now all of a sudden changed drastically. So I'm doing all the things that I would like, except for fishing, I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
like to
yeah.
do. And I'm doing that. And I'm with my kids constantly. Our relationship is obviously getting tighter. I'm seeing all those little tick for tacks that make them who they are.
Mm,
Likewise with my wife, I'm like, oh, I'm seeing different things all of a sudden. I'm like that I never saw before.
mm.
And same with, I mean, I'm chatting here. So you, it's because I'm also reading this book right now by Carl Zimmerman called Civilizations and Family.
Huh.
And he bases his whole like rise and fall of empires on the basis of the health of the family.
Okay.
So one of his biggest arguments is like with the absence of family is the beginning of the fall. To the first, and he theorized that as soon as we started moving away from the farm home, like small home, tight knit group, and moved into suburbia, that the birth rate would decrease, all this stuff would happen. Like it would be this separation. This is what he theorized moving forward from the stuff that he studied before. He was lucky enough to be alive still when that book came out, so he could add part to it again. So I have
Mm,
that edition.
mm,
And what he realized is in his research might have been misplaced, in fact, when we moved from the farm home to suburbia, the birth rate increased.
Hmm.
And but once the woman started to move, which is one of his theories, is when women started to work and become the primary incomer earner as a whole, as a percentage of the whole, like that was more, then these other things started, and that's still true today as it's ever been. And so it was just interesting to see that. And then now we have this moment where we get like, it's almost legitimately a reset or a reflection time to say, hey, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah.
do I need to be working like a dog? On my husband need to be working dog, and then try to fit family, relationship, and free time inside of 3 hours a day, every day?
Right. Right. Right.
Doesn't even like Monday to Friday, I would have free time for about an hour, realistically, right? So you have, and then the rest of it, you got to fit family in.
Yeah.
You got to fit family and food. You got to get the kids into bed. You've got to fold your clothes. You got to do all that. You got to try and upkeep your house. I don't even know how you do it. Now I have time to do it, and I still barely can keep on top of it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now it's like I'm venting out here, and you need to say something. What have you noticed now? Like, I mean, you're still working? Like, are you still like
Yeah.
having to produce curriculum, teaching? Like, what are you doing that by?
Yeah. So I'm like a lot of professors, we've moved online. Being so close to the end of the term, it was really hard for us to just, um, call it quits.
Mm,
In fact, in a lot of ways, like I said, with so many moving parts, it was hard to know the severity of this crisis, the outbreak, how hard it was going to hit us. And what I'm starting to see is like the variety in statistics around the world. Sweden is this weird outlier where they're not even practicing social distancing,
mm,
and it's controversial, but it's based on this logic that to do so is to actually create greater risk for the most vulnerable for a
mm,
second wave of the outbreak to hit them, right?
mm,
By maintaining some kind of normal normal relations. At least there's that you're keeping your immunosystems up.
mm,
You're exercising it and so on.
mm,
Now that's a country with socialized medicine, and they've got ventilators and resources to deal with the outbreak. It should have hit there. But then there's other countries like Germany where they're just being really strict and disciplined in their social distancing, and the rates are low there also. So anyway, getting back to my point here with teaching, we just decided to teach from home, to move things online, sort of to figure out the technologies as we will. Um, I was teaching an intro sociology course, um, which is, I've sort of gone into posting audio recorded lectures and an upper level seminar course where I'm, just getting my students to facilitate discussions through their own audio recordings and then
mm.
posting and circulating those for us to all comment on and write reflection papers on and then email those to me. So I'm trying to keep that going. We've got like 2 more weeks to go before I get the final papers, and then I'll probably have another week or two after that to get final grades in. So um, the provincial, like Manitoba, just provincial government just closed down all libraries today. Um, Seems like a March 31st was sort of a gauntlet dropping for a number of, all non-essential services were mandated closed and so on. And so that's putting some pressure on different, schools to determine whether to assign final grades, sort of, stopping in place where we are. At least the public schools have gone and they issued that statement today saying that they're going to, just stop grading unless you can, produce some, one last sort of shot and improve your mark a little bit with a final assignment, something like that. I think that's a reasonable response in the sense that for those people sort of making up the bell of that curve, it gives them a chance to, improve their grade, because a lot of them, they might have been sort of trucking along, and there's, different things like life happening like this,
Mm.
sort of got in the way, and at least it gives them one last chance to give it their best shot. And I think there's something good about that. We don't know how this is going to play out, whether it's going to be, you know, another month or 6 or longer.
Mm.
So,
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I'm like, okay, let's say it lasts. I'm kind of on the Sweden side of things. I see their point. Um, and I understand why Americans are scared out of their pants. It's going to cost them a lot.
yeah, sure is. Yeah.
And then you have the whole idea of the vulnerable. And then you're making yourself almost vulnerable because, like, the thing is, we're all probably going to get it.
Mm.
It's not like it's kind of like the rodeo analogy. It's not if you get hurt, it's when you get hurt.
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
going to get it. And I actually, to be honest with you, because I don't know when China started reporting it. I don't know when people started moving, but I feel like I've had it already. Like I had a cough, like in the beginning of like maybe mid-February, I was coughing up blood. Oh my gosh, man, I was just all over the place. And then
Oh,
they
man.
went to check to see if I had pneumonia, and it just oh man, it was just rough.
Yikes.
And I had like a really weird fever at the beginning. Like I'm like, oh, and I had a respiratory issue, so I was taking a pump. Like I'm like, that sounds like corona to me. What I've been reading. That was all there. It sounded like a cold that you can't breathe. I'm like, that's what I had. I don't know. And it was chucking up blood. Go figure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that I don't know what it's going to play out like when we're going to get the sickness, like how that's going to look like, especially because the second wave is more deadly than the first wave.
Mm.
Because you seize
Because,
everything in the first wave. You're like, oh, everyone,
right.
these people have it, and it's coming
Mm.
fast. It was kind of like what flu was it? The Asian flu the bird flu that they
Mm.
stopped in China. They were able to stop it from getting
Mm.
it before we got here. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it was a bird flu, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They were
Mm-hmm.
able to quarantine at some point when this disease showed up. Another
Mm-hmm.
corona, what do they call it?
Virus.
Novelty strain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but this time they didn't. They weren't
Mm.
able to.
Mm-hmm.
You can go conspiracy you want. I don't care. Whatever. Just
Mm-hmm.
that it's here now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of something to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to die. People are already dying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not insensitive to that.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
On that front. And we'll have to mourn with those people that are suffering and hurting
Mm-hmm.
from that. But again, like this disease is not gender oriented. It is not race oriented. It seems to be a little age, like it seems to be age has a finality to age. So, and I don't think I've worded that properly, but age seems to play and health. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a wake up call for a lot of people because the antidote to this is how health. The major crux is how healthy are you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before it hits you. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you have a pre-existing condition?
Yeah.
Do you have like are you overweight or are you a smoker? Those are the two other
Right.
big.
Right.
And in the States, are 45% of their people that are obese are over like super obese.
Right.
What are you gonna do?
It's yeah, not good conditions there. No.
Not at all.
No.
Like a lot of people die.
No. There are some interesting positives I was reading about over the weekend.
Okay.
Another article in the Globe by Doug Saunders, who
Okay.
was writing from Berlin, talking about how cities are a better place to be than rural areas or towns or villages.
Mm.
So, and that's because of the concentration of resources, medical expertise,
Yeah.
the resources. I mean, Wuhan built a hospital in 6 days.
Mm.
That's unprecedented.
Yeah.
Um,
6 days.
at least like a sort of expert level hospital,
Yeah.
not just a tent, like a Red Cross tent,
Yeah.
on the war battlefront or something.
No, a legit
Um,
hospital.
right. And I happen to know that there are plans in the works for the same sort of thing to go up in Montreal and probably other cities in the country.
Mm.
So, to be in a city is probably better than, and that's the problem with Italy. Like you mentioned, the age factor.
Mm.
Um, in Italy, it hit all of the concentrated, personal care homes and the small towns and villages where there were not medical resources
Yeah, there's
available.
zero.
Yeah.
Well, that's like what they're doing here in Quebec. They've shut down entry into certain places because there's just no resources to take care of the people if they were to like. So what they're trying to do is slow that spread so that we can get it all, deal with
Right.
it, and then open up the heavens
Mm.
and let it rain. All I'm saying.
Right.
But we need to get it. It's because it's a virus that we need to have, and then we have to like. It's one of those things that I think is going to start driving local market back up.
Mm.
It's going to drive local, in-house manufacturing is going to go up.
Mm.
We're going to see a lot of stuff try to be done in-house, and we're going to have to follow the model of the Chinese. We might have to pay less. We might have to pay people less to do it,
Mm.
and that's going to be hard for Canada. It's going to be hard for the United States to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right? Because you're going to need you have 330 million people over there in the States. 5% of those people are likely to die.
Mm.
It's a pretty big chunk of your population out.
Right.
But then, how do you? But how? My question with manufacturers, you've got to be able to manufacture for the remaining amount of people.
Mm.
Where are you going to get your resources from to create the products you need?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of those fine dining things and just extras are going to start falling away by the wayside, man.
Right. A lot of the luxuries. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm not paying $3 for a donut anymore. I think that was absurd in the first place.
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of nice, but
Right. I took my kids for a bike ride today
okay.
in the afternoon so that my wife could finish up work. So we went to Assiniboine Park. It's like a major city park here in Winnipeg,
Okay.
and there's an ice cream shop right across from the park. And we rode up. Sure enough, it was closed.
Mm.
It could have been out of season still.
Mm.
Some of the ice cream shops in Winnipeg don't open until May long.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure even if it was after May long, under today's circumstances, it would have been closed.
Okay.
Non-essential service.
Oh,
So I had to convince my kids to ride all the way back home.
okay.
No ice cream till we get home.
Oh
So,
man. But
yeah,
that's the reality of what we live in, and I think that's just better. Bike rides are great.
yeah,
I'm like, because I'm looking at the house that I bought, and I'm like, what did I buy? Thinking about and then I actually have a backyard. Could you imagine if you didn't have one
oh yeah, it's true. Yeah,
and you had kids?
yeah,
We can
it's
make noise. We got drum kits. We got all kinds of little gadgets all over the place. We have space.
yeah,
I mean, and that's something else people are going to start looking for. Apartments, buildings will start because those people are at high risk, right? They can't even go anywhere. They can't touch a doorknob, everything.
yeah,
So now, why are you going to live in close quarters?
right, yeah, yeah,
Well, the problem is they want a constant, stable weather pattern. I think it's innate in us. We want that stability and pattern. So,
yeah,
or we want stability of resources.
right,
So
right.
move to a metropolis, a city, you have stability of resources and you have access to all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah,
All the
that's
time.
true. Yeah, that's true.
You have 24-hour this, 24-hour that. Those things are built on not sleeping. It was crazy. I skateboarded on my street today. There was no cars. And my road is a work road. So everyone we go basically from 7:30 to 9, you can't walk on that road. You can't even be near the road. And then from 4 till 5:30, essentially the same thing, going back up the other way.
Mm-hmm.
We were out there just having a ball, scootering all over our road. It's a downhill road too, so it was scary for my kids, having to slow down. They did not have helmets on, everybody. Not that I wanted that, but
they were just ready to
feel
go,
like
and
my childhood right now. I just grabbed the scooter and we just went on the road. It was just that.
Right. Wow.
I actually had to buy we had a trampoline. I was like, oh, now I have to refit the trampoline because the net broke and all the padding was disgusting and broke. So that showed up. I was happy because I was able to put that back up. But man,
yeah,
it's interesting to see. Again, I really feel like there's going to be something that's going to be elevated, and then something that's going to be kind of dropped down a bit, and then it's that social distancing is going to have its consequences.
Yeah. I mean, mental health and you're right. These are silver linings, and I think it's important to have and look for the silver linings, because I think it's those kind of things that are going to sustain us
Mm.
through these more existential
Mm.
problems, like the mental illness. Like, I can only imagine, uh, if you need a hug and you can't even get a hug, stuff like
Mm.
that. It's good.
What does Steve think about the homeless?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
and like they have that issue, but like again, we live in Canada. Like for those of you who are listening, we live in Canada, and so each province is run differently a little bit on their healthcare, but it's generally the same. The
Mm-hmm.
taxes pay for it. If you want to go and pay a little, either you can do a public-private thing, or you just go down the states and get it done. But we can't do that anymore right now. But what the scary part is for a lot of people is that the technology is almost there. Okay, so
Mm.
we have the capacity to research it, figure it out, and whatever. Right? They said they're like right now they're about a year away from a vaccine. So if it was to show up again, this novelty strain, we would have something to deal with it.
Mm.
And it's from something. I think it's something that they used in the Spanish flu that they're bringing back.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just heard about that. And that's just recently. It starts with a B. I forget what it's called, but yeah, so they're trying to remanufacture this thing that kind of, because it's very similar, like a respiratory issue, blah blah blah. I think the scary part is that we don't have the resources when it comes to physical stuff like masks, Purell, like
Mm.
we don't have enough beds, we don't have enough space.
Mm-hmm.
So we can technically care for these people, but we just don't have enough of what we need to take care of the people.
Mm.
And I'm not taking a knock at the church, but it's almost the same as the problem with the church. And then what I say by that is that we weren't setting up for a rainy day, even though we tell people to set up for a rainy day.
Mm.
So a lot of non-for-profits didn't have 3 months salary stockpile, didn't have a capital fund.
Right.
A lot of people didn't work at having a capital fund
Right.
in the case of this. But we,
Right.
as a church, we teach, hey, and in any financial institution, we'll say, hey, you should have 3 months saved away for a rainy day.
Right. Right.
And like I was released a week in. One Sunday, one online service Sunday, I was released.
Wow.
Because the giving was that, and then the next week the secretary was gone.
Great.
So that's definitely something we got to think about, right? Is the model different, whatever. But that's for a lot of people. They didn't think about that, right?
Right.
And then you're
right,
thinking about all
right.
the people who've been working under the table. That's going to help our taxes now. They've been working on the table for how long? Not paying into taxes.
Mm.
And now they have to declare. How are they going to declare for EI? They can't. So now they're like, they played that game for so long, and they kind of, they made their circle, that made it work, whatever, and now you can't.
Right. Right.
So,
so are they going to tap in? Like, for instance, our government just promised over $100 billion to help people without EI,
right?
Which would probably include, cash.
But how does that work? Like, who's going to foot the bill? Who's going to foot the bill? Well, you and me will foot a bit of it, but a lot of the high-end construction working jobs that are like staples, like so any iron worker, concrete worker, that produce roads, buildings, and like hospital buildings, like those people, right? Because they make a lot of money. Like those contracts are huge, but they pay huge in union fees, huge in taxes. That's how that keeps our economy rolling. And my brother is actually an iron worker. He's still working, and they don't have any like protocol at work, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like they have guys that are like working close quarters, and they call them essential, but he believes because the government needs to keep them there. He makes a valid point. They have to keep working to pay this. They're going to foot this bill of $100 billion. Which is like, here, we're just going to create 100 billion. Like, what? How do you create 100 billion out of nowhere, out of thin air?
Well, it's a what do you call it? It's a deficit, that they'll be drawing from the future generations. It's a tax. It'll have to be a tax that we end up paying for a long, long time. How long, we don't know. And
that's it. And then it's like, so now because of our inability to foresee the future, our children's children will pay the penalty. And what's cool with like being a faith person is that The Bible tells us to set up for our as wise man is when it's a wise man saves for his children's children's children.
Mm,
So you should be able to work on you should already be saving for your child's sorry, it was your children's children.
that's substantially more than a 3-month rainy day fund.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And if you imagine if we thought what's happened is, I think for us is like, and again, this is one of the things that we're going to be reflecting on over the next little while is how do we deal with the instant gratification?
Mm,
Because
mm,
now that button has been almost instantly
yeah.
removed, like
Yeah.
instantly removed from us. We can't get the instant gratification. We have to think about it first. Like, do I
Yeah.
really need coronavirus right now?
Right. 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 Right.
I mean, that's my thing. What do you think is going to happen about that?
There was so as a Christian, I'll put that hat on now.
Okay.
um, it's the issue of, like I mentioned, mental illness earlier, um, and there's some good friends, like people I really appreciate and admire. We're struggling with some mental illness, and I was wondering, like, what is there something in the scripture that talks about dealing with anxiety? Of course, we know about um, the scriptures about fear and uh, you know perfect love casts out fear and things like that. But I started wondering about some of the spiritual practices that are described in the Bible throughout the old, the Jewish Torah right up to the Christian books. Um, and the one spiritual practice that I became interested in studying was the Sabbath.
Mm.
And I started wondering, is there something about the Sabbath that helps us to deal with mental illnesses of any kind, but most especially anxiety? And I just did a simple review of a few books, but the one that comes to my mind immediately was written by Walter Brueggemann, who was a bit of a rebel kind of guy in the sense that he's always trying to challenge the reader. And he did a short book recently called Sabbath as Resistance. And in that book, he describes what work was like under the ancient Egyptians for the Israelites. So this, if you're not familiar with the story, this was the time when the Israelites had been living in Egypt for several generations. I forget how many. Um, and they had, established a certain relationship to the Egyptians who had hired them to work on building for them, a lot of construction, whatever. And this is the story when Moses is called after leaving Egypt for a while, and then um, God calls him through the burning bush to go back to Egypt and demand Pharaoh release the Israelite people so that they could go into the desert to worship God. And so, of course, that's where all the plagues happen. They go through, the 12 plagues of the Nile turning to blood and locusts and various pestilences, and finally it culminates in the uh, Passover, when the firstborn are all killed. Finally, there's enough time where Pharaoh releases the Israelites and they leave, and there's enough time for them to get away and get to the Red Sea, where God parts the sea, and they get out of there. And as the Egyptian army catches up to the Israelites, God releases the waters, and they come crashing down on the Israelite soldiers and annihilating the whole uh, army. But it's something about that working relationship in ancient Egypt that struck me. It was slavery, right? And you talk about another way of thinking about how slavery was operating in that ancient world is to just realize that it defined who they saw themselves to be. Everything about that working rhythm of daily work, it was so ingrained in them that even after they had left Egypt and they were going through the desert, they still had moments where they longed to go back there. There was something about it that overtook their minds. There was no sense of being apart from it as being better for them.
Mm.
Um, and in a lot of ways, Brueggemann describes this like pure capitalism, right? In the sense that we become defined by what we work, what we do, that defines who we are, and our tendency is to do this all the time. And so, the only way God could break the ancient Israelites out of that sort of rhythm was to institute these 10 commandments, with the Sabbath being right in the middle. Technically, it's the fourth of the 10 commandments, so it's not really right in the middle.
Mm.
But it joins together those first three, which have to do with putting God above all else, not having any idols before Him, and so on, which is our vertical relationship to God.
Mm.
And the rest of the commands, which have to do with basically Christian ethics, not coveting your neighbor's wife, not murdering, and so on.
Mm.
So right in the middle is the Sabbath. There's something about that I think offers us some kind of, chance for renewal, for breaking us out of the regular cycle of work and so on.
Mm. I think that you're onto something. I think a lot of businesses will get onto that. Like right now we're forcing all of the essentials to shut down on Sunday in Quebec. That is legit what's happening. And the person's like, they're like, because they need to rest. And I'm like, yes, they do.
Yeah.
We can't keep running at that rate. You can't keep it up. And if you want to think outside the box, you have to do outside the box things. Everybody's working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Well, for you, then you're going to have to stop.
Right.
That's the counterculture.
Yeah.
Why do we get some of the best songs that have ever been written? Not because I like the style, not because of any of that stuff, but just because they're timeless. Written by people who took time to go write them.
Right.
Who stepped away. And then what happens inevitably is they start working too much and they can't create anymore. They cannot create because they're in this mode of, I've got to perform, I have to perform, I have to perform. My wife was the same thing, right? She's a musician, whatever, singer-songwriter. And now all of a sudden, time is away. The brain gets to relax. And so all of these, I find that like almost nuances of creativity or just very finesse things show up in your brain. And if you're going 100 miles an hour doing the same thing over and again, you'll miss that little intuition. All of a sudden, the little thing that drops into your brain. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I can do this now.
Yeah.
Wait, no, those words will connect. And your receptors are now open as opposed to being closed, so that you can focus on the things you need to focus on.
Right.
Like I have become a better drummer in the last 3 weeks than I have ever been in my entire life. So the last Sunday that we played like worship at our church. Okay, so worship, it just means we're playing music and we do that and we sing songs and we worship or adore our God. Okay, that's what that means. So I was playing drums and like my wife was like, she just looked back and was like, who is this guy? Like she was just like, it was one of the best comments I heard. It's like, if I'm not distracted by the drums, they did a great job. And she wasn't distracted. And I even got to do like one of those. I did probably one of the craziest like dump it in the toilets I've ever done in my entire life, man. Oh my gosh. And it was just like, it was awesome. Even I knew there was something different even in the sound check where you're doing like kick, snare, then one time. And then like, they put the overheads on and then you get to kind of like rip the kit for like 10, 15 seconds so they can get the whole kit feel, right?
Yeah.
And I ripped and I was like, I was so much more relaxed. And this was just pre-corona. So I was getting ready for it, I think. I just sat back. I wasn't sitting up on the front of the kit, like trying to like get in, but I was just sitting back, man. And like, we come off the click or something and I would just be able to like touch it, come right back in. And I was like, yeah, I'm just sitting there, just boom. And I'm like, what is this? And then like we finished the song or whatever. And even in that worship set, we did like, everyone's like, the fear in church worship, in church music sets is that there's silence somewhere. There's absence of sound.
Yeah.
but in the absence of sound, God's music is made. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that the craziest thing I ever, like, that's the craziest thing I ever thought of. It's like, in the absence of human created sound is God's music. So he's making this music. So we just had this silent moment, and that's not what she said at the moment. That's me thinking that right now. And so I was like, okay. And the next song that we had was a fast song. So I'm like, we're not even gonna like kind of do that slow train back on up, like get up there. It was like a full on, let's go. We're going from 72 beats a minute when we're coming up to 115, 120. And the song is normally at 130. So I was bringing it down anyways. And we play that song and I'm just jamming. And also because we had this new bass guy, and it was a young guy, but he worked his tail off, man, to get the part. And he wasn't just doing your typical, like, play the open note, like this, boom, boom, boom. He was playing the bass lines. So I was just grooving. And I'm like, I've been practicing, a lot, just thinking about how to play to the click and what are the essentials to actually drumming. And one person really identified it. It was a lady. She's like, you need to, you have a little.
Got a visitor coming.
Hey, yo.
Get out of my office, doctor.
Hey, listen. How are you doing?
I'm not on this thing, really, am I?
No, you want to say hi to Monsieur Shawn?
Monsieur, comment ça va?
Ça va bien. Oh my God.
Our program later, eh?
Yeah. We'll cut it out. Don't worry. I'll just.
Jeez.
At first, I thought it was like your son walking down. I'm like, oh, because you like came down slow down the stairs, like you're like, tick, tick. Like, oh, that's. We'll have to. Like, we're already having to cut this out.
I was hoping he was sitting over on the couch over there because I needed to do a little bit more work here. And he's stealing my desk.
No, listen, we're almost done. We're gonna have to do part 2 because we're gonna talk easily for another 3 hours.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.